He thought inviting his homeless ex-wife to his $1 million wedding would be the cruelest joke of all. He wanted 300 wealthy guests to watch her stumble through the door in rags. He wanted his beautiful new bride to see the pathetic woman he threw away like garbage. He had been driving past her on the streets for 3 years, rolling down his window just to mock her in front of strangers. And now, he wanted one final victory. But when a sleek black car pulled up to the Grand View estate that evening, and an elegant woman in an emerald green dress stepped out, every conversation in the room stopped dead. 300 people turned to stare. His bride went pale. And Jonathan Peterson, the man who thought he had already won, felt his entire world begin to crack beneath his feet. Because the broken woman he expected to see was gone, and the woman who walked through those doors was about to destroy everything he had built with nothing but the truth. What she did next left 300 guests in tears, ended a wedding, and ruined a millionaire's reputation in under 10 minutes. This story carries a powerful message. Your worth is never defined by your circumstances, your bank account, or the cruelest things someone has said about you. It is defined by who you choose to be when the world gives you every reason to give up. Elena lost everything except the one thing no one could take from her, her dignity. And that turned out to be more powerful than all of his millions combined. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and leave us a comment telling us where you are watching from today. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message right now. And if you have not already, subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. Your support means more than you know. He thought it would be the ultimate humiliation. Inviting his homeless ex-wife to his $1 million wedding, knowing she would show up in rags, desperate and broken. He wanted 300 wealthy guests to see her begging for scraps at his table. He wanted his beautiful new bride to see the pathetic woman he had left behind. He wanted everyone to witness his final victory over the woman who once believed in him when nobody else did. But when a sleek black car pulled up to the Grand View estate that evening, and an elegant woman in an emerald green dress stepped out, the entire mansion went silent. The same woman he had been mocking on the streets for 3 years walked through those golden doors like royalty. Heads turned, whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd, and Jonathan Peterson's face went completely white because the homeless woman he expected to see was nowhere to be found. And what happened next would destroy his perfect wedding, shatter his reputation, and change both of their lives forever. Hello everyone, welcome to our story. Before we continue, please do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from today. Are you in London, maybe Los Angeles, Toronto, or somewhere else entirely? We would love to hear from you. Now, let us go back to where it all began. Jonathan Peterson had not always been rich. 10 years ago, he was struggling just like everyone else in this world, working long hours at a small accounting firm in downtown Chicago and barely making enough money to pay his rent on time. He drove a beat-up car that broke down every other week. He ate cheap noodles for dinner most nights. He wore the same 3 suits to work, rotating them so nobody would notice. Back then, he had met Elena Morrison at a community center where she volunteered teaching children how to read. She had kind eyes that lit up like Christmas lights whenever she talked about helping others. And when she smiled, it made the whole room feel warmer, like someone had just opened the curtains on a sunny morning. They fell in love the way people do in movies, slowly at first, then all at once. Jonathan would wait for her outside the community center every evening, holding a single flower he had picked from the park across the street. Elena would laugh and tell him he was being ridiculous. But she always took the flower and pressed it into a book she kept by her bed. They got married in a beautiful but simple ceremony at a small church on Maple Street, with just their closest friends and family there to celebrate. Elena wore a dress she had found at a second-hand shop and altered herself. Jonathan wore a borrowed suit that was slightly too big in the shoulders. They could not afford a big wedding or an expensive honeymoon or fancy decorations. But none of that mattered. They were happy just being together. They were two people who had found something real in a world full of pretend, and that felt like more than enough. Elena was Jonathan's biggest supporter from the very beginning. She believed in him the way you believe in the sunrise. Completely, without question, without hesitation. When he came home exhausted after a terrible day at work, ready to quit everything and give up on his dreams of starting his own financial consulting business, she would sit beside him on their worn-out couch, take his hand, and say the words that kept him going. "Do not give up, Jonathan. I believe in you. You are going to do amazing things someday. I know it in my bones." And he believed her, because when Elena said something, she meant it with every fiber of her being. She was not the kind of person who threw words around carelessly. When she said she believed in you, you felt it deep in your chest like a heartbeat. Jonathan's business started small, just him working from their tiny one-bedroom apartment, making phone calls at the kitchen table, and sending emails late into the night while Elena slept in the next room. Some nights he would work until 3 in the morning, his eyes burning from staring at his laptop screen, his back aching from sitting in a cheap folding chair, and Elena would wake up at midnight, walk into the kitchen in her old bathrobe, and set a fresh cup of coffee beside him without saying a word. She would kiss the top of his head, squeeze his shoulder, and go back to bed. That small act of love, that quiet support, meant more to Jonathan than he would ever admit. She believed in his vision, even when he doubted himself, even when the bills piled up, even when the phone stopped ringing, even when their landlord threatened to evict them because they were 2 months behind on rent. Elena never wavered. She picked up extra shifts at her job. She cut coupons. She sold some of her jewelry. She did whatever it took to keep them afloat while Jonathan chased his dream. And slowly, month by month, his company began to grow. He got his first big client, a local restaurant chain that needed financial restructuring. Then his second client, a small tech startup. Then his 10th. Then his 20th. The money started coming in. First just a trickle, barely enough to notice. Then more and more, like a river that kept getting wider. Jonathan went from taking the bus to work to buying his first car, from their small apartment to a bigger house in a nicer neighborhood, from worrying about bills every single night to having more money in his bank account than he had ever dreamed possible. In 5 years, Peterson Financial Group had become one of the most successful consulting firms in the Midwest. Jonathan Peterson was officially a millionaire. But as Jonathan's bank account grew bigger and bigger, something inside him started to change. Something ugly and dark and cold that neither of them saw coming. Something that would destroy everything they had built together and leave Elena with nothing but heartbreak and empty hands. The changes started small. So small that Elena almost did not notice them at first. Jonathan started coming home later and later, always saying he had important meetings or business dinners with clients who could not meet during the day. He stopped asking Elena about her work at the community center. When she told him stories about the children she taught, about little Marcus, who had finally learned to read his first full sentence, or about tiny Sophie, who had written her first poem, Jonathan would barely look up from his phone. When Elena cooked his favorite meals and set the table nicely with candles and fresh flowers, he would eat quickly and leave the table, saying he had work to do in his office. The dinners that used to last hours, filled with laughter and conversation and plans for the future, now lasted 15 minutes at most. "Jonathan," Elena would say softly, trying to keep the hurt out of her voice, "can we spend some time together this weekend? Just you and me, like we used to? Maybe we could go to that little Italian place on 5th Street. Remember how we used to split a plate of pasta and talk until they closed the restaurant?" "I am busy, Elena," he would reply without even looking at her. "I have meetings, important people to see, big deals to close. You would not understand." But Elena did understand. She understood perfectly well what was happening. She understood that the man she had married, the man she had supported and believed in and sacrificed for, was disappearing. And in his place was someone she barely recognized. Someone cold, someone distant, someone who looked at her like she was a piece of furniture that had come with the old apartment and no longer matched the new decor. The truth was that Jonathan had started living in a different world. A world of expensive restaurants and private clubs and people who measured each other by the size of their bank accounts and the brand names on their clothes. He had started spending time with people who looked down on anyone who was not wealthy, who laughed at people who still took the bus, who considered kindness a weakness and generosity a waste of money. And slowly, without even realizing it, Jonathan had started seeing the world through their eyes. He had started seeing Elena through their eyes. And through those eyes, she was not enough. She was not polished enough, not sophisticated enough, not wealthy enough, not impressive enough. She was just Elena. Kind, generous, hard-working Elena, who still volunteered at the community center on weekends, and who still got excited about a child learning to read. And to the new Jonathan, that was embarrassing. Then one evening, everything fell apart completely. Jonathan came home early for once, but he was not carrying flowers or takeout from their favorite restaurant. He was carrying divorce papers, a thick stack of legal documents in a brown envelope. He did not even sit down. He just placed the papers on the kitchen table where Elena was sitting, drinking tea and waiting for him like she did every evening, like she had done every evening for the past 8 years. "What is this?" Elena asked, her hands shaking as she picked up the papers and saw the words, "Petition for dissolution of marriage," printed across the top. "It is a divorce," Jonathan said flatly. Like he was talking about the weather. Like he was telling her it might rain tomorrow. "I want out of this marriage, Elena. You are holding me back. I need someone who fits my lifestyle now. Someone who understands the world I live in. Someone who can walk into a room full of powerful people and belong there." Elena felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet, like someone had pulled a trap door, and she was falling, falling, falling with nothing to grab onto. "Holding you back?" she whispered. "Jonathan, I supported you through everything. I believed in you when nobody else did. I worked 4 jobs so you could start your business. I sold my mother's ring so we could make rent. How can you say, I am holding you back?" "That was then," Jonathan said coldly. He did not look at her. He looked at the wall behind her, at a spot just above her head, like she was not even worth making eye contact with. "This is now. I have moved on, Elena. You should too." "But I love you," Elena whispered, and the tears came then, streaming down her face like rain on a window. "Love does not pay the bills," Jonathan replied. His voice was flat, empty, completely devoid of the warmth it once held. "Love does not build empires. Love does not impress the people who matter. I am going places, Elena, and I cannot take you with me. You would only slow me down." The divorce was brutal. Jonathan had hired the most expensive lawyers in the city, a team of 3 attorneys from a prestigious firm who specialized in protecting wealthy clients during divorce proceedings. They were ruthless, thorough, and completely without mercy. Elena could not afford a lawyer at all. She represented herself in court, sitting alone at a table, while Jonathan's legal team sat across from her in their $1,000 suits, shuffling through stacks of documents designed to strip her of everything. Jonathan's lawyers made sure he kept almost everything: the house, the money, the business that Elena had helped build from nothing, the cars, the investments, the retirement accounts, everything. Elena, who had given up her own career to support his dreams, who had worked 4 jobs to keep them afloat during the early years, who had sacrificed everything she had so Jonathan could chase his vision, was left with almost nothing. The judge awarded her a small settlement, barely enough to cover 6 months of rent in a modest apartment. Within months, the money ran out. Without savings for rent, Elena lost her apartment. The landlord gave her 30 days' notice, and she packed her things into 4 garbage bags because she could not afford boxes. Without a place to live, she could not get a job because every application required a permanent address. She tried using the community center's address, but employers checked and found out she did not actually live there. She tried staying with friends, sleeping on couches and in spare bedrooms, but she could not burden them forever. One by one, the invitations dried up. People who had been her friends during the good years did not know how to handle her during the bad ones. They felt uncomfortable around her poverty the way people feel uncomfortable around illness. They did not know what to say, so they stopped saying anything at all. Eventually, on a cold Tuesday night in November, Elena Morrison ended up on the streets. She spent her first night sleeping on a bench in Lincoln Park, wrapped in a thin blanket she had taken from the last friend's house, shivering so hard her teeth chattered until dawn. It happened so fast it felt like a nightmare. One day, she was a married woman with a home and a husband and a life that made sense. The next day, she was homeless, sleeping on cardboard boxes in doorways, trying to stay warm with thin blankets that smelled like someone else's sadness, standing in line at shelters, hoping for a bed, hoping for a meal, hoping for someone to look at her and see a human being instead of a problem. But even living on the streets, even at her absolute lowest point, Elena Morrison never lost the thing that mattered most: her kindness. She would share her food with other homeless people who looked hungrier than her. She would comfort frightened children she met at the shelters. She would smile at people passing by on the sidewalk, even when they looked away from her, like she was invisible. Even when they crossed the street to avoid walking near her. Even when they clutched their purses tighter and picked up their pace. 3 years passed this way. 3 long, hard, brutal years of cold nights and hungry mornings and the slow erosion of everything she once was. While Elena survived on the streets, Jonathan Peterson grew richer and more powerful with every passing month. His company expanded beyond Chicago into New York, Los Angeles, and Miami. He bought a mansion on Lakewood Hill overlooking the entire city, a sprawling estate with 12 bedrooms, a swimming pool, and a driveway long enough to land a small airplane. He drove cars that cost more than most people's houses. He wore suits, hand-tailored in Italy, that cost $5,000 each. He ate at restaurants where a single meal cost more than Elena spent on food in an entire month. Everyone wanted to be Jonathan Peterson's friend. Everyone wanted to do business with him. Everyone wanted to be seen standing next to him at charity galas and business conferences. But success had made Jonathan even colder, even meaner, even more convinced that the world was divided into 2 categories: winners and losers. And he was a winner. He never forgot about Elena. In fact, he thought about her more often than he would have admitted to anyone, but not with guilt or sadness or regret. He thought about her the way a hunter thinks about a trophy mounted on a wall. Seeing her fall so far gave him a twisted sense of satisfaction that he could not quite explain. It made him feel powerful, to know that he had risen so high while she had fallen so low. It made him feel like the universe was confirming what he already believed, that he was special, that he was better, that leaving Elena had been the right decision. Sometimes when Jonathan drove through the city in his black sports car, he would see Elena on a street corner. She was always in the same area, near the intersection of Main and 7th, wrapped in an old blanket, sitting on a piece of cardboard, her belongings in a worn plastic bag beside her. And instead of feeling ashamed or sorry for what he had done to her, instead of feeling even a flicker of the love they once shared, Jonathan would slow down his car, roll down his window, and call out to her, always loud enough for other people to hear, always with an audience. "Elena, is that you?" he would shout, his voice dripping with fake concern, his sunglasses pushed up on his head so she could see the amusement in his eyes. "Oh my goodness, you are still living out here? That is so sad. You really should try harder to get your life together. But I guess some people are just not meant for success, right?" People on the sidewalk would stop and stare. Some would whisper to each other. A few would pull out their phones, wondering if they were witnessing something they should record. Elena would stand there quietly, keeping her face still, refusing to give Jonathan the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She had learned that trick in her first year on the streets, how to keep the pain inside, how to build a wall between what she felt and what she showed. This happened many times over the 3 years, at least once a month, sometimes more. Each time, Jonathan felt more powerful. Each time, he pushed a little harder, said something a little crueler, stayed a little longer, to make sure his words landed. "You know, Elena," he said during one particularly cruel visit, leaning out of his car window, while 3 women on the sidewalk watched with wide eyes. "I saw a documentary about homeless people last night. Very depressing stuff. And I thought of you. I said to myself, that is exactly what Elena's life looks like now. Is it not funny how things work out? I followed my dreams and became a millionaire. And you followed your heart and became, well, this." He gestured at her blanket, her cardboard, her plastic bag of belongings. Then he laughed and drove away, the engine of his $200,000 car roaring as it disappeared down the street. Elena watched him go. She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not chase after his car or throw anything or collapse on the sidewalk. She just stood very still and waited for the trembling in her hands to stop. Then she sat back down on her cardboard, pulled her blanket around her shoulders, and went back to surviving. Because that was what Elena Morrison did. She survived, quietly, stubbornly, with a grace that Jonathan Peterson would never understand because he had never needed it. But everything was about to change. Everything was about to change because of one cream-colored envelope that would arrive in Elena's hands on a cold Tuesday morning. An envelope that contained an invitation to Jonathan's wedding to a beautiful, successful woman named Sarah Elizabeth Moore. An invitation that was meant to be the final humiliation, the ultimate proof of Jonathan's superiority. An invitation that would instead become the beginning of the most shocking night of Jonathan Peterson's entire life. It was a Tuesday morning in mid-November, and the city was just waking up. Elena sat on her usual corner at Main and 7th, wrapped in her old brown blanket, watching the sunrise paint the tall buildings orange and gold. She had spent the night in a doorway 3 blocks away, her back pressed against a metal grate that was slightly warm from the building's heating system. She was sorting through her small bag, taking inventory of what she had. A half-empty bottle of water, the last piece of a granola bar someone had given her yesterday, A worn paperback book she had found in a trash can outside the library, the pages wrinkled from rain but still readable, a clean pair of socks. $2 bills. Then she heard a sound that made her stomach drop. The roar of an expensive engine, a sound she knew too well. Elena looked up and saw the shiny black sports car pulling up to the curb. The same car she had seen too many times before. Jonathan's car. No, she whispered to herself. Not today. Please, not today. But the car stopped right in front of her corner. The driver's window rolled down smoothly, and there he was. Jonathan Peterson, wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than she used to earn in a month. His hair perfectly styled, his smile wide and white and completely empty of warmth. "Elena?" Jonathan called out cheerfully, like they were old friends bumping into each other at a coffee shop. "Good morning. Beautiful day, is it not?" Elena did not answer. She just looked at him and waited for whatever cruel thing was coming next. A few people on the sidewalk slowed down, sensing that something interesting was about to happen. "I have something special for you today," Jonathan said, reaching into his car. He pulled out a cream-colored envelope, thick and expensive-looking, sealed with gold wax. Something very, very special. He held the envelope out of his window, but when Elena did not immediately reach for it, he let it drop to the ground near her feet. "Oops," he said, with a fake apologetic smile. "Sorry about that. My hand slipped." The small crowd that had gathered watched in uncomfortable silence. Nobody told Jonathan to stop. Nobody helped Elena pick up the envelope. "It is an invitation to my wedding," Jonathan announced, making sure his voice carried to everyone within earshot. "I am getting married, Elena, to a wonderful woman named Sarah. She is everything I ever wanted. Smart, beautiful, successful, classy. She knows how to dress properly, how to talk to important people, how to carry herself with dignity. She is nothing like you, Elena. Nothing at all." Each word was designed to cut deep, and they did. Elena felt her throat tighten, but she refused to cry. Not here, not in front of him, not in front of all these watching strangers who would forget about her the moment they turned the corner. "The wedding is at the Grandview Estate," Jonathan continued. 300 guests. The mayor will be there. Business leaders, celebrities, people who actually matter. And I want you to come too. I really do. Because I am a generous person, Elena. I think you deserve to see what real success looks like. He paused, his smile growing wider and crueler. "I will even save a plate of food for you. You must be hungry all the time, right? Well, at my wedding, there will be food you cannot even imagine. Lobster, filet mignon, chocolate desserts that cost $50 each. You can eat until your stomach hurts. Consider it my last gift to you." He started his engine. 1 week from today. Saturday evening at 7. Formal attire required, of course. He said formal attire like it was a punchline to a joke only he found funny. Then he put his sunglasses back on, gave her one last condescending smile, and drove away. The expensive engine roared as the car disappeared down the street. The crowd slowly dispersed. A woman glanced back at Elena with something like pity in her eyes, then shook her head and kept walking. Within 2 minutes, Elena was alone again. She sat very still for a long time, staring at the cream-colored envelope on the dirty sidewalk. She did not pick it up right away. She just looked at it, thinking about everything Jonathan had said, everything he had implied, everything he wanted to happen at his perfect wedding. He wanted her there as a prop, a visual aid for his success story. "Look, everyone, this is my ex-wife. She used to be the someone, and now she is nothing. Look how far I have risen. Look how far she has fallen. Is it not wonderful to be me?" This invitation was not an act of kindness. It was a trap. Carefully designed, precisely calculated, intended to be the final, ultimate humiliation. Elena reached down, slowly, and picked up the envelope. Her hands were shaking, but not from the cold. They were shaking from something she had not felt in a very long time. Not sadness, not self-pity, not acceptance. Anger. Pure, burning, righteous anger. She opened the envelope and read the invitation. Gold lettering on thick cream paper. You are cordially invited to celebrate the wedding of Jonathan Michael Peterson and Sarah Elizabeth Moore. Saturday, the 23rd of November, 7 o'clock in the evening. The Grand View Estate. Formal attire required. At the bottom, in Jonathan's own handwriting, were the words, Dear Elena, please do come. I insist. It would mean so much to have you there. Jonathan. Elena read the invitation 3 times. Each time, the anger burned hotter. But alongside the anger was something else. Something powerful, something she had not felt in 3 years. Determination. She folded the invitation carefully and put it in her bag. Then she stood up, her legs stiff from sitting on cold concrete, and looked down the street in the direction Jonathan's car had disappeared. 1 week, she said quietly to herself. I have one like. She was going to that wedding, and when she walked through those doors, she was not going to be the broken, defeated woman Jonathan expected to see. She was going to remind him and everyone in that mansion that her worth had never come from money or status or fancy clothes. It had always been inside her. And nothing, not 3 years on the streets, not 1,000 cruel words, not all the money in the world, could take that away. But first, she needed help, and she knew exactly who to call. Elena pulled out her phone. It was an old beat-up phone with a cracked screen and a battery that died if you looked at it wrong, but it still made calls, and that was all she needed. She scrolled through her contacts until she found a name she had not called in over a year. Marissa Lawson. Marissa had been Elena's best friend since college. They had met freshman year in a psychology class, bonded over their shared love of terrible horror movies and good Italian food, and had been inseparable ever since. Or at least, they had been inseparable until Elena's life fell apart. Marissa was a stylist and fashion consultant who had built a successful business working with wealthy clients all over Chicago. She dressed executives for board meetings, styled socialites for charity galas, and helped regular people look their best for the most important moments of their lives. She was talented, kind, sharp as a razor, and one of the few people who had tried desperately to stay in touch with Elena after the divorce. But Elena had been too ashamed to keep answering Marissa's calls, too embarrassed to let her best friend see how far she had fallen. Every time Marissa called, Elena would stare at the phone and let it ring, telling herself that Marissa was better off without her, that she would only drag Marissa down, that it was better to disappear than to be a burden. Eventually, after months of unanswered calls and unreturned messages, Marissa had stopped reaching out, and Elena had convinced herself it was better that way. Now, standing on a cold street corner, with an invitation to her ex-husband's wedding in her bag, Elena stared at Marissa's name on her cracked phone screen and felt fear mixing with her determination. What if Marissa did not answer? What if she had changed her number? What if she answered but did not want to help? What if she was angry about Elena disappearing? What if she said no? Only one way to find out, Elena whispered. She pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Elena's finger hovered over the end call button. She was about to hang up when she heard a voice. Hello? It was Marissa. Her voice sounded a little different than Elena remembered. Maybe a little tired, maybe a little older, but it was unmistakably her. Elena's throat tightened. For a long moment, She could not speak. "Hello?" Marissa said again. "Is anyone there?" "Marissa." Elena's voice came out as barely a whisper. "It is me. It is Elena." Silence. A long, heavy silence, filled with 3 years of distance and unanswered phone calls, and all the things they should have said to each other, but never did. Then Marissa's voice cracked wide open. "Elena? Oh my God. Is it really you? Is it really truly you? I have been so worried. I tried calling you so many times. Your number stopped working, and I did not know where you were, and I thought maybe something terrible had happened, and I could not find you anywhere, and I almost filed a missing persons report, but I did not know if that would make things worse, and—" "I am sorry," Elena interrupted softly, her voice thick with tears she was trying not to shed. "I am so sorry I disappeared. I was ashamed, Marissa. I was so ashamed of what my life had become. I thought it would be easier to just let go of everything and everyone from my old life. I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me? Elena, where are you right now? Are you safe? Are you okay?" Elena looked around at the street corner, at her old blanket, at the cardboard she sat on, at the pigeons pecking at crumbs near her feet, at the people walking past without seeing her. "I am not okay, Marissa. I have not been okay for a long time, but I need your help. I need your help with something really important, something that cannot wait." "Anything," Marissa said immediately, without a single moment of hesitation. "Tell me what you need, and I will help. Where can we meet?" "There is a coffee shop on Main Street, the one with the blue awning, next to the flower shop." "Do you know it?" "I know it. Can you be there in 1 hour?" Elena looked down at herself. Her faded clothes, her tangled hair, her shoes with the soles coming loose. She probably looked like someone the coffee shop manager would escort to the door before she could sit down. "I will be there," Elena said. "And Elena?" "Yes?" "Thank you for calling me. I mean that. Whatever you need, whatever has happened, we will figure it out together. I promise you that." They hung up. Elena stood on the street corner for a moment, holding her cracked phone against her chest, feeling something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. 1 hour later, Elena was sitting at a small table in the corner of the coffee shop, trying to make herself as invisible as possible. Through the window, she could see her reflection, and the woman staring back at her looked tired, worn, diminished. Nothing like the Elena who used to meet Marissa at places like this and laugh until her stomach hurt. The door opened, and Marissa walked in. She looked almost exactly the same as Elena remembered. Stylish, confident, put together. She wore a beautiful camel coat. Her dark hair was perfectly styled, and she carried herself with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was and liked that person just fine. But when her eyes landed on Elena in the corner, all that composure cracked like thin ice. Her eyes filled with tears, and her hand flew to her mouth. "Elena," Marissa whispered, rushing across the coffee shop. Elena stood up, and before she could say a word, Marissa wrapped her in a hug, so tight it was like she was trying to hold together all the broken pieces at once. It had been so long since anyone had hugged Elena that she had almost forgotten what it felt like. She closed her eyes and let herself be held, just for a moment, just long enough to remember that she was not completely alone in this world. "Tell me everything," Marissa said after they sat down, after she had ordered 4 muffins and 2 large coffees and slid them all across the table to Elena. "Tell me what happened, all of it." So Elena told her about the divorce, about the lawyers who took everything, about losing her apartment, then her job, then her friends, then her dignity. About the first night on the street and how cold the concrete was, about learning to survive on nothing, and about Jonathan, about how he drove past her corner like it was a tourist attraction, about the things he said, about the way he smiled while he said them. Marissa's face grew harder with every word, her jaw tightening, her hands gripping her coffee cup until her knuckles turned white. Then Elena reached into her bag and pulled out the cream-colored invitation. She slid it across the table, without a word. Marissa read it. Her eyebrows climbed higher and higher with each line. "He invited you to his wedding," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "That man actually had the nerve to invite you to his wedding. As what? Entertainment?" "As proof," Elena said. "Proof that he won and I lost. He wants me to show up in rags so his 300 rich guests can see the pathetic homeless woman he left behind and congratulate him on his upgrade." That is the most disgusting thing I have ever heard in my life. "I am going, Marissa." Marissa blinked. "You are what?" "I am going to that wedding, but I am not going as the broken woman he expects to see. I am going to walk into that mansion with my head held high, and I am going to look every single person in that room in the eye, and I am not going to be ashamed. Not anymore, not ever again." Marissa stared at her for a long, charged moment. Then, slowly, a fierce smile spread across her face. "Okay," she said. "Then we have work to do." Now I want to pause here for just a moment, because some of you listening to this right now might be thinking about your own life. Maybe you know what it feels like to be defined by your worst moment. Maybe someone has looked at you and seen your circumstances instead of your character. Maybe someone has treated you like you are less than, not because of who you are, but because of what you are going through. If that is you, I want you to keep listening, because what happens next might change how you see yourself. Marissa took Elena home to her apartment that afternoon. It was in a nice building downtown, the kind with a doorman and an elevator that did not smell like anything. Elena took the longest shower of her life, standing under the hot water until it ran cold, washing away 3 years of grime and shame and other people's judgments. When she came out, wrapped in a soft bathrobe, she found Marissa sitting on the couch with a notebook full of plans and a phone full of contacts. "I called in every favor I have," Marissa said, tapping her pen against the notebook. "My friend Sophia, one of the best dress designers in the city, is meeting with us tomorrow to create something incredible. My hairstylist Marco has cleared his Friday afternoon, and my makeup artist friend Lisa heard the whole story and volunteered to help for free because, and I quote, she wants to be part of the moment that awful man gets what he deserves." "Marissa, this is going to cost a fortune," Elena protested. "I cannot let you spend your money on me. You are not letting me do anything. I am choosing to do this. This is not charity, Elena. This is war, and I intend to win." The week passed in a blur of fittings and practice and preparation. Sophia created a dress that made Elena gasp when she first saw it. Deep emerald green, floor length, with a subtle shimmer that caught the light like water. It was elegant without being flashy, sophisticated without being cold. The kind of dress that made people stop and stare, not because it was expensive, but because the woman wearing it looked like she belonged in it. Marco spent 2 hours on Elena's hair, cutting away the damage and styling what remained into soft, elegant waves that framed her face like a painting. He stood back when he was finished and said, "My God, this woman has been hiding under there this whole time." Lisa worked her magic with brushes and powders and colors, enhancing Elena's features without hiding them, making her look not like a different person, but like the best version of herself. But the physical transformation was only half of what Marissa had planned. Every evening that week, after the stylists had gone home, Marissa and Elena sat together in the living room and worked on something far more important than hair and makeup: confidence. "When you walk into that ballroom," Marissa said, standing in front of Elena like a drill sergeant, "you cannot hesitate, you cannot look down, you cannot apologize for being there. You are not sneaking in through the back door. You are walking through the front entrance like you own every square inch of that mansion. I do not know if I can do that, Elena admitted. It has been so long since I felt like I belonged anywhere. Then we practice until it feels natural. Stand up. Walk toward me. Head high, shoulders back, eyes forward. Like you know something nobody else knows. Like you have a secret, and the secret is that you are worth more than every person in that room combined. Elena practiced walking. She practiced speaking clearly and confidently. She practiced making eye contact without flinching. She practiced standing in a room and taking up space without apologizing for it. By Friday evening, something had changed. It was not just the dress or the hair or the makeup. It was something deeper, something internal, something that had been buried under 3 years of cold sidewalks and cruel words, but had never actually died. Elena looked in the mirror and saw a woman she recognized. Not the old Elena, the one who existed before the divorce. Someone new. Someone who had been through fire and come out the other side, not unscathed, but unbroken. You look incredible, Marissa said from the doorway on Saturday evening, her eyes shining with pride. Absolutely incredible. I feel different, Elena said. I feel like I remember who I am. No, Marissa corrected gently. You look like an even stronger version of who you always were, because you have survived things that would have broken most people in this world. That kind of strength shows, Elena. It is in your eyes. A car horn honked outside. Marissa had hired a driver for the evening, a sleek black town car that would deliver Elena to the Grand View estate in style. Elena picked up the small clutch purse Marissa had given her and took a deep breath. I am ready. Wait, Marissa said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. I wrote this for you. If you feel nervous when you get there, if your hands start shaking and your heart starts pounding and you want to turn around and run, read this. Elena took the paper and hugged her friend, holding on tight for a long moment. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for answering the phone, for believing that I was still in here somewhere. Go show them who you really are, Marissa said, and call me the second it is over. I want to hear every single detail. The drive to the Grand View estate took 30 minutes. Elena sat in the back of the town car, watching the city lights blur past her window, feeling her heartbeat get faster with every mile. As they climbed the hill toward the estate, the houses got bigger and bigger, the lawns more perfectly kept, the cars in the driveways more expensive. Finally, they pulled up to a massive iron gate with gold details. The driver spoke to a security guard, showed Elena's invitation, and the gates swung open slowly, revealing a driveway lined with trees wrapped in thousands of tiny white lights. The mansion was enormous. 3 stories of white stone and enormous windows glowing with warm light. A fountain in the center of the circular driveway sent water 20 feet into the air. Luxury cars were parked everywhere. Valets in crisp uniforms moved between them like choreographed dancers. The town car pulled up to the main entrance, and a valet opened Elena's door. Good evening, ma'am, he said politely, offering his hand. Elena took his hand and stepped out of the car. The moment her heels touched the stone driveway, she felt heads begin to turn. She stood up straight, head high, shoulders back, eyes forward, just like Marissa had taught her. She began walking toward the entrance. With each step, more conversations paused. More eyes found her. More whispers started. Who is that? A woman in a silver dress asked her husband. I have no idea, he replied. But she is stunning. Elena kept walking. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her ears, but her face showed nothing but calm confidence. She reached the entrance where two staff members were checking invitations. "Good evening," one of them said with a practiced smile. "May I see your invitation?" Elena opened her clutch and produced the cream-colored card. The staff member glanced at it, then looked up at Elena with slightly wider eyes. "Welcome, Miss Elena. Please enjoy the evening." He opened the door, and Elena stepped inside the Grand View estate. The interior was even more spectacular than the outside. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings that seemed impossibly high. Marble floors gleamed like frozen lakes. Flowers were everywhere, white roses and lilies arranged in towering displays that must have cost thousands of dollars each. The air smelled like expensive perfume and money. Elena paused for just a moment to take it all in. Then she remembered the piece of paper Marissa had given her. She pulled it out of her clutch and unfolded it carefully. In Marissa's handwriting, it read, "You belong anywhere you choose to stand. You are not less than anyone in that room. You are enough exactly as you are. Now go in there and remind them of that. You got this. Elena." Elena folded the paper, put it back in her purse, lifted her chin, and walked into the main ballroom. The effect was immediate and electric. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. 300 of the wealthiest, most powerful people in Chicago turned to stare at the woman who had just appeared in the doorway. She stood there, framed by the light from the hallway behind her, the emerald green dress catching the glow of 100 chandeliers. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. Her eyes were clear and steady and completely unafraid. A woman near the entrance actually dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor, but nobody looked at the broken glass. Everyone was looking at Elena. She began to walk. Slowly, deliberately, every step measured and confident. The crowd parted before her, like water before the bow of a ship. "Who is she?" someone whispered. "I have never seen her before," another voice said. "She must be someone important," a man murmured to his wife. Elena kept her face serene as she moved through the crowd, but inside, her heart was a drumbeat. She could feel the curiosity, the admiration, the speculation. It was the opposite of everything she had experienced for 3 years. On the streets, people looked through her. Here, they could not look away. Then she heard a voice from the front of the ballroom that made every muscle in her body tense. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to celebrate this special night." Jonathan Peterson stood at the altar, microphone in hand, wearing an expensive black tuxedo. His hair was perfect. His smile was enormous. Beside him stood Sarah Elizabeth Moore in a stunning white wedding gown, holding his arm and beaming at the crowd. "Sarah and I wanted to share this moment with the people who matter most in our lives," Jonathan continued, scanning the crowd with the satisfied expression of a man who believed he had everything figured out. Then his eyes found Elena. His voice stopped. His smile collapsed. His face went from confident to confused to terrified in the space of about 3 seconds. The microphone in his hand began to tremble. "Jonathan?" Sarah said beside him, looking concerned. "Are you okay? What is wrong?" But Jonathan could not answer. He was staring at Elena like he was seeing a ghost, like reality had just malfunctioned and the laws of the universe no longer applied. Around the ballroom, people began to follow Jonathan's frozen gaze. One by one, 300 heads turned toward the woman in the emerald green dress. And then the whispers started. "Is that who I think it is? It cannot be. Oh my God, that is Elena Morrison. That is Jonathan's ex-wife. But I thought she was homeless. I thought she was living on the streets. Look at her. She looks like a queen." Elena stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by 300 staring faces, and felt something break free inside her chest, something that had been locked away for 3 years behind walls of shame and silence and survival. She looked directly at Jonathan. Their eyes met across the room, and then she spoke. "Hello, Jonathan," she said. Her voice was clear and strong and carried across the entire ballroom without her needing to raise it even slightly. "Thank you for the invitation. I would not have missed this for the world." The silence that followed Elena's words was so complete you could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor from across the room. 300 people stood frozen, champagne forgotten, conversations abandoned, every eye fixed on the woman in the emerald green dress and the man at the altar whose face had turned the color of old paper. Jonathan's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound came out. He looked like a fish that had been pulled out of the water and did not understand why it suddenly could not breathe. "Elena," he finally stammered, what are you, how did I clean up so well?" Elena asked calmly. "Is that what you are trying to ask?" A ripple of uncomfortable movement went through the crowd. People were beginning to understand that whatever was happening here was not part of the planned program for the evening. Sarah tugged on Jonathan's arm, her perfect smile faltering. "Jonathan, who is this woman? Why is she talking to you like she knows you?" Before Jonathan could answer, an older man near the front of the crowd spoke up. His voice was loud and carried clearly through the silent room. "That is Elena Morrison, Jonathan's ex-wife." The gasps that followed were loud enough to echo off the ballroom's vaulted ceiling. "His ex-wife?" Sarah's voice rose with each word. "Jonathan, you invited your ex-wife to our wedding? Why would you do that?" "I can explain," Jonathan said quickly, his eyes darting between Elena and Sarah like a trapped animal looking for an escape route. "It was just, I was being generous. I thought she might want a nice meal and—" "He invited me as a joke," Elena said. Her voice was not loud. She did not shout or scream or raise her voice even slightly, but every single person in that ballroom heard her, because the room was so quiet that her words hung in the air like smoke. "He drove to the street corner where I have been sleeping for 3 years," Elena continued. "He rolled down the window of his sports car. He threw this invitation at my feet in front of a crowd of strangers. And he told me to come to his wedding so I could see what real success looks like. So I could eat a plate of food at his table like a stray dog being tossed scraps." The energy in the room shifted. You could feel it, like the moment before a storm when the air pressure drops and every living thing goes still. "That is not true," Jonathan said, his voice getting loud and defensive. "I invited her out of kindness, out of generosity. She is twisting my words." "Is she?" A voice came from the crowd. An older woman in a dark blue dress stepped forward, her face hard with anger. "Because I saw you do it, Jonathan. 3 months ago, downtown at Main and 7th, you stopped your car and said horrible things to this woman while people watched. I was there. I remember because I was so disgusted that I almost confronted you about it." "I saw it too," another voice said. A man in a gray suit raised his hand. Twice, actually. "You seem to enjoy it." More murmurs, more shifting. The room was turning, and Jonathan could feel it. "She is my ex-wife," Jonathan protested. "I had every right to—" "To what?" Elena interrupted, taking one step closer to him. "To punish me? For 3 years? To drive past me on the street and make sure I never forgot that you had everything and I had nothing? To use my suffering as your entertainment?" She turned to face the entire room. 300 faces stared back at her. Some showed shock. Some showed anger. Some showed tears. She had their complete, undivided attention. and she was going to use it. When Jonathan and I were married, she said, her voice steady and clear, I supported him through everything. I worked 4 jobs so he could start his business. I sold my mother's ring to cover our rent. I skipped meals so he could afford supplies. I believed in him when every single person in his life told him he was dreaming too big. People were nodding now. Some of them had been there during those early years. Some of them remembered the young couple who had nothing but each other and a dream. And when he became successful, Elena continued, when the money came and the big house came and the fancy cars came, he decided I was not good enough anymore. He divorced me, took everything, and left me with nothing. But that was not enough for him. She paused, letting the silence do its work. For 3 years, he drove past me on the street and humiliated me in public. He mocked me. He belittled me. He made sure everyone within earshot knew that I was worthless and he was everything. He did not do it once. He did it again and again and again, because watching me suffer made him feel powerful. Now here is something I think many of you listening right now understand. You know what it feels like when someone uses their power to make you feel small. When someone who is supposed to care about you uses your vulnerability against you instead. If you have ever been in that situation, you know the special kind of pain Elena was describing. And you know the courage it takes to finally stand up and speak the truth. Stop it, Jonathan said, his voice cracking. Just stop it, Elena. Why? Elena asked, looking directly into his eyes. Because the truth is uncomfortable? Because all these people are finally seeing who you really are behind the expensive suit and the charming smile. Thomas Crawford, a silver-haired businessman who was one of the most respected figures in Chicago's business community, stepped forward from the crowd. His face was grave. Is this true, Jonathan? He asked. Did you really treat your ex-wife this way? She is exaggerating, Jonathan said desperately. She is bitter about the divorce. She is trying to make me look bad. I am not trying to make you look like anything, Elena said calmly. I am just telling the truth. And the truth is that you invited me here tonight so that 300 wealthy people could look at me in my rags and feel sorry for me while they congratulated you on your success. You wanted me to be your trophy, Jonathan, your proof that winning is all that matters. She took another step toward him, and Jonathan actually stepped backward. But I did not come here for your pity, she said, her voice rising now, with an emotion that filled the room like music. I did not come here to beg for food. I did not come here to be your entertainment. I came here to remind you, and everyone in this room, that my worth as a human being has nothing to do with how much money is in my bank account or whether I sleep in a bed or on a sidewalk. The room was utterly still. I came here to show you that 3 years of cruelty did not break me, that you did not destroy who I am. I am still the same person who believed in you when you had nothing. I am still the same person who worked day and night to help you build your dream. The only difference between then and now is that I do not have a home, but I still have my dignity. I still have my kindness. I still have my worth. And those are things you can never take from me. Several people in the crowd were openly crying. Others were nodding, their faces filled with a fierce kind of respect. And you know what the saddest part is? Elena said, her voice dropping to something almost gentle. You have everything, Jonathan. Money, success, this mansion, a beautiful bride, and you are still so insecure, so empty inside, that you needed to humiliate a homeless woman to feel good about yourself. What does that tell you about the size of the hole you are trying to fill? Jonathan's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. His face had gone from red to white to a grayish color that made him look 10 years older than he had looked 10 minutes ago. Sarah stepped away from him. One step, then another. She was looking at her fiancé like she was seeing him clearly for the first time, like she had been looking at a beautiful painting and someone had just turned on the lights and revealed it was a forgery. "Is what she is saying true?" Sarah asked quietly. "Did you really treat her like that? Did you really drive past her on the street and mock her?" "Sarah, listen to me," Jonathan said, reaching for her arm. She pulled away. "Did you?" Sarah demanded. Her voice was hard now, hard and sharp, like glass breaking. Jonathan looked around the room for help, but he found none. Every face was looking at him with a mixture of disappointment, disgust, and something worse than either. Pity. "I was just," Jonathan started weakly. "She was homeless, and I was successful. And I thought—" "You thought you were better than her?" Sarah finished. "You thought that because you had money and she did not, you could treat her however you wanted. You thought her suffering was entertaining. That is not—" "Yes, it is." Sarah's eyes were filling with tears, but her voice did not waver. "That is exactly what it is. Oh my God, Jonathan, I am standing here in a wedding dress, about to marry a man who drives past homeless people and mocks them for fun. What kind of person does that?" "Sarah, please," Jonathan begged. "Not here. Not in front of everyone. You did not care about having an audience when you humiliated her," Sarah shot back. "Why should I care about having one now?" She looked at Elena, and her expression softened completely. "I am sorry," she said. "I had no idea who he really was. If I had known, I never would have agreed to any of this." "It is not your fault," Elena said gently. "You did not know. How could you?" Sarah nodded, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and turned to face Jonathan one final time. "We are done," she said. "I will not marry someone who treats people this way. I refuse." "Sarah, wait," Jonathan called as she turned and walked away, her white dress trailing behind her on the marble floor. "Sarah, please, we can talk about this. Come back." But Sarah did not come back. She walked straight through the ballroom doors, and 3 of her bridesmaids hurried after her, their heels clicking rapidly on the floor. The ballroom erupted. 300 people talking at once, their voices rising and falling in waves of shock and outrage and disbelief. Jonathan stood at the altar alone, his microphone hanging forgotten at his side, watching his perfect wedding collapse around him like a house built on sand. He turned to Elena with hatred burning in his eyes. "Are you happy now?" he hissed. "You have ruined everything I built, everything I planned." "I did not ruin anything," Elena said, her voice still calm, still steady, still unshakable. "I told the truth. You ruined everything yourself, Jonathan. You just did not realize it until tonight." Thomas Crawford stepped forward again, his expression serious enough to make several nearby guests take a step back. "Jonathan, I think you need to consider what has happened here tonight," Thomas said. "And I think you should know that after what I have witnessed, I am not comfortable continuing our business relationship. I do not associate with people who treat other human beings the way you have treated your ex-wife." "What?" Jonathan's eyes went wide. "Thomas, you cannot be serious. We have been partners for 5 years. And in 5 minutes tonight, I have learned more about your character than I learned in all 5 of those years." Other voices joined in. A woman in a red dress who owned a chain of retail stores. A man with silver cufflinks who ran a private equity firm. A couple who controlled one of the largest real estate portfolios in the Midwest. I am out too. This is unacceptable. We should have seen this sooner. I do not want my name associated with someone who treats people this way, because if this is how he treats a woman who sacrificed everything for him, how will he treat us if things go wrong. One by one, then in groups, the guests began moving toward the exits. The wedding that was supposed to be the crowning achievement of Jonathan Peterson's life was emptying out like a theater at the end of a bad movie. People shook their heads as they walked past Jonathan. Some could not even look at him. Others looked at him too long, with expressions that made him flinch. Jonathan stood at the altar, surrounded by flowers and candles and empty chairs, watching his reputation, his relationships, and his carefully constructed image disintegrate in real time. Elena watched it all unfold with a strange mixture of emotions. She did not feel joy. She had not come here to destroy Jonathan's wedding, or end his engagement, or drive away his business partners. She had come here to stand up straight and speak the truth and refuse to be ashamed anymore. But the truth, once spoken, has a way of doing its own work. And the truth about Jonathan Peterson was doing plenty of work tonight. She turned to leave. Elena, wait. She turned back to see Thomas Crawford approaching her, followed by a small group of people. Miss Morrison, Thomas said respectfully, I do not know if you remember me. We met several years ago at a literacy fundraiser. You were organizing the entire event. I remember, Elena said, surprised that he remembered her. I was impressed by your work then, Thomas said. And I am even more impressed by what I have witnessed tonight. What happened to you, losing everything, ending up on the streets, that could happen to anyone. A bad divorce, bad luck, one wrong turn. But how you have carried yourself through it, how you have maintained your humanity and grace despite everything, that is extraordinary. A woman in a blue dress stepped forward. I run a nonprofit that helps people experiencing homelessness rebuild their lives, she said. Job training, housing assistance, career counseling. I would love to talk to you about joining our team. Your first-hand experience would be invaluable, and honestly, we need someone with your heart. I have connections to housing programs, another man added. I can help you find a place to live. I own a staffing agency, a woman said. When you are ready, I can help you find work. Elena looked at all these people, these strangers who, 20 minutes ago, might have walked past her on the street without a second glance and felt tears forming in her eyes for the first time that evening. But these were not tears of sadness or shame or pain. These were tears of something she had almost forgotten the name of. Hope. Why? She asked softly. Why are you all being so kind to me? Thomas smiled warmly. Because you reminded us of something important tonight, Miss Morrison. You reminded us that success is not measured by the size of your bank account or the address on your mailbox. It is measured by how you treat people, and you showed more grace and dignity in 10 minutes than some of us have shown in 10 years. Elena walked out of the Grandview estate surrounded by people who saw her, not the blanket, not the cardboard, not the worn shoes or the street corner. They saw her. Outside in the cool November air, Marissa was waiting by the car. She had been pacing back and forth for the past hour, checking her phone every 30 seconds, too anxious to sit still. When she saw Elena emerging from the mansion's front doors, with a group of well-dressed people clustered around her, all talking at once, Marissa's mouth fell open. Elena excused herself from the group, promised to meet with each of them in the coming days, and walked to Marissa's car. What happened in there? Marissa demanded, her eyes wide as dinner plates. I have been losing my mind out here. And why are all those people following you? Did something happen? Did he see you? What did he do? What did you say? Tell me everything right now, or I am going to explode. Elena slid into the passenger seat and let out a long, slow breath. The kind of breath you release when you have been holding something heavy for a very long time and you finally set it down. Then she started laughing. Not a bitter laugh, not a hollow laugh, a real, genuine, from the belly laugh that filled the car and spilled out the windows. "I told the truth," Elena said simply. "I told everyone the truth about what Jonathan did to me." And Sarah called off the wedding. She did not. She did. She walked right out of the ballroom in her wedding dress. And then his business partners started pulling away from him one by one. Thomas Crawford told him to his face that he was reconsidering their partnership. Marissa stared at her for a long moment, then grabbed Elena's hand and squeezed it so hard it almost hurt. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. "So incredibly, unbelievably proud." As the car pulled away from the Grandview estate, Elena looked back at the mansion through the rear window. The lights were still blazing, but people were streaming out the doors in groups, shaking their heads, climbing into their cars, driving away from the ruins of Jonathan Peterson's perfect evening. Elena turned back around and looked at the road ahead. 3 months later, Elena stood in front of a small apartment building on Birch Street, on the east side of the city. It was not fancy. The lobby did not have a doorman. The elevator made a concerning sound when it moved between floors. The walls needed a fresh coat of paint, but it was hers. Thomas Crawford had connected her with a housing assistance program that helped her secure the apartment. The nonprofit director, whose name was Rachel, had hired Elena as a program coordinator, working directly with people experiencing homelessness to help them navigate the system and find their way back to stability. It was the perfect job for Elena. She knew what her clients were going through because she had been there herself. She knew the fear and the shame and the loneliness. She knew what it felt like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be treated as less than human. And she knew from her own experience that those feelings were lies, that every person sitting across from her desk was worthy of respect and compassion and a second chance. She was good at the job, really good. Within 2 months, she had helped 11 families find permanent housing. She had connected 23 individuals with job training programs. She had personally mentored 6 people through their first weeks of employment, showing up early to help them pick out interview clothes from the office donation closet, quizzing them on common interview questions, and sending them text messages on their first day that said simply, "You have got this. I believe in you." The same words she had once said to Jonathan a lifetime ago, except this time she was saying them to people who deserved to hear them. Marissa came over every Wednesday evening for dinner. They would cook something simple, pasta or soup or grilled cheese sandwiches, and sit at Elena's small kitchen table and talk for hours. Sometimes about important things, sometimes about nothing at all. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, 2 old friends who had found their way back to each other and were grateful for it every single day. "Do you ever think about him?" Marissa asked one evening, twirling spaghetti around her fork. "Less and less," Elena said honestly. "At first I thought about him every day, about what he did, about what he said, about how he made me feel. But now, weeks can go by without him crossing my mind." "Good," Marissa said. "That is exactly how it should be." Elena heard through mutual acquaintances that Jonathan's life had taken a dramatic turn after the wedding that never was. Sarah had not only called off the engagement, she had told everyone she knew about what had happened that night. The story spread through Chicago's business community like wildfire. Several of his major business partners had quietly severed their relationships with him. 2 clients had terminated their contracts. A profile piece in a business magazine about up-and-coming entrepreneurs had been pulled when the editor heard about the incident at the Grandview estate. Jonathan was still rich. He still had his company, though it was smaller now. He still had his mansion on the hill, though it must have felt emptier. He still wore expensive suits and drove expensive cars, but he was alone. His cruelty had finally caught up with him, not in the form of punishment or revenge, but in the simple, natural consequence of people seeing who he really was and choosing not to be around him anymore. Elena did not celebrate his downfall. She did not gloat or feel satisfied or tell herself that he got what he deserved. She did not think about him much at all anymore. She was too busy living her life, helping others, and building something real and meaningful from the ashes of everything she had lost. Some nights, she would lie in her bed in her small apartment, listening to the sounds of the city outside her window, and think about the journey that had brought her here, the love she had given so freely, the betrayal that had shattered her world, the 3 years of cold concrete and empty stomachs, and the slow, grinding erosion of her sense of self. And then the invitation, that cream-colored envelope that was meant to be her final humiliation, but became instead the doorway to her resurrection. She thought about Marissa, who answered the phone after a year of silence and said, "Anything. Tell me what you need and I will help." She thought about Sophia and Marco and Lisa, who had poured their talent and their time into helping a stranger because they believed that kindness was worth more than money. She thought about Thomas Crawford and Rachel and all the others at the wedding who had seen past her circumstances and recognized her character. And she thought about herself, about the woman who had survived 3 years on the streets without losing the one thing that mattered most, her humanity. She had not won by destroying Jonathan. She had not won by humiliating him or taking revenge or plotting his downfall. She had won by refusing to let him destroy her, by standing up, standing tall, and speaking the truth without shame or apology, by choosing, in the most difficult moment of her life, to be exactly who she had always been, kind, brave, worthy, unbreakable. And that, she thought, as she closed her eyes and drifted toward sleep, was the only kind of victory that ever truly mattered. Now, before we end this story, I want to speak directly to you. Yes, you, the person listening to this right now. Maybe you know what it feels like to be counted out. Maybe someone has looked at your circumstances and decided they know your whole story. Maybe someone in your life, a partner, a family member, a boss, a stranger, has tried to make you feel small. Has tried to make you believe that your worth depends on your job title, or your bank balance, or the neighborhood you live in, or the clothes on your back. If that is you, I need you to hear this. They are wrong. They have always been wrong. And deep down, in the part of yourself that still believes in who you really are, you know they are wrong. Your circumstances do not define you. Your bank account does not define you. Other people's opinions of you do not define you. You define you. The way you treat people when nobody is watching defines you. The way you get up after being knocked down defines you. The kindness you choose to show even when the world has not been kind to you, that is what defines you. Elena could have stayed in her corner that Saturday night. She could have crumpled up that invitation and thrown it away. She could have let Jonathan win. She could have accepted his version of her story. That she was nothing, that she was worthless, that she was a failure who deserved to be forgotten. But she did not. She stood up. She called a friend. She asked for help. She walked through those doors. She spoke her truth. And in doing so, she did not just change her own life. She changed the lives of everyone who witnessed it. So, wherever you are right now, whatever you are going through, whatever someone has tried to make you believe about yourself, remember this. You are not what happened to you. You are not your worst day. You are not the labels other people put on you. You are enough, exactly as you are. Right now, in this moment. Reading this from wherever you are in the world, hold on to that. It is the truest thing I know. Thank you so much for listening to this story today. If Elena's journey touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. We want to hear from you in the comments. What did you think of Elena's transformation? Have you ever faced someone who tried to make you feel worthless? What would you have done in her situation? And where are you watching from? Tell us your city or your country. We love hearing from you. If you have not already, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. We post new stories every week about resilience, courage, dignity, and the incredible power of the human spirit. Remember, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are enough. See you in the next story. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with real-life lessons. Thank you for watching.